holds autumn at bay, standing like a fortress of calm against the restless season beyond its stone walls. Inside these hallowed halls, the air itself feels different, thicker, more substantial, carrying the weight of countless words, countless quiet discoveries made in the embrace of solitude and study. Light filters through tall windows, catching motes of dust that dance like tiny spirits in golden beams. Each particle carries the essence of paper, of binding glue aged to amber, of wooden shelves worn smooth by countless seeking hands. The dust settles slowly, gently, accumulating the dreams of all who have passed through this sanctuary. The silence here is not empty but full, pregnant with possibility, layered with the soft percussion of turning pages, the gentle whisper of pencil across paper, the barely audible sigh of books being opened, being closed, being discovered for the first time or revisited like old friends. It's the kind of silence that invites contemplation, that honors the sacred act of learning, of becoming more than one was when first crossing the threshold. Arched windows stretch from floor toward vaulted ceilings, their glass old enough to hold imperfections, tiny bubbles and waves that transform ordinary daylight into something more magical. Light streams through these imperfect panes, creating patterns on reading tables that shift and change throughout the day, marking time not with harsh precision, but with gentle gradation, the slow ballet of shadow and illumination. Above it all, a dome of stained glass catches the afternoon sun, transforming light into a symphony of color, amber and gold, deep blue and forest green, rose and violet that seem to glow from within. The dome breathes with the changing light, inhaling brightness during peak afternoon hours, exhaling softer hues as evening approaches, creating a natural rhythm that synchronizes with the internal rhythms of those who work and read and dream beneath its protective embrace. Between towering shelves that stretch toward the ornate ceiling, narrow aisles create intimate corridors, private spaces where discovery happens in solitude. The shelves themselves are works of craftsmanship, dark wood polished by decades of careful hands, carved with subtle decorative elements that honor both function and beauty. Each book spine creates a small vertical billboard, advertising worlds waiting to be entered, ideas waiting to be considered. Leather bindings aged to rich burgundy sit beside bright paperbacks, academic texts, neighbor poetry collections, creating a democracy of ideas that knows no hierarchy except relevance to the seeking mind. The air between the stacks carries scents layered like geological strata, the vanilla sweetness of aging paper, the mineral tang of old binding glue, the subtle mustiness that comes from books that have absorbed decades of human atmosphere that exists nowhere else, a sensory signature that marks this as a place apart. Footsteps approach along the poetry aisle, soft-soled shoes moving with the particular rhythm of someone who belongs here, who understands the etiquette of sacred spaces. Noah moves between the shelves with practiced ease, his fingers trailing along book spines like a pianist's across keys, feeling for the subtle vibrations that indicate compatibility, that suggest a book and reader ready to meet each other. From the opposite end of the same aisle, another figure moves with equal purpose but different energy. Elena approaches the shelves with the particular grace of someone who sees beauty in details. Her burnt orange scarf catches the filtered light, creating a warm accent against the muted tones of leather and aged paper. Her notebook bristles with small paper tabs, evidence of a mind that organizes its discoveries. The pencil tucked behind her ear rests there with the casual familiarity of a tool in constant use, ready for the moment when a margin calls out for annotation, when the perfect phrase appears and must be captured before it evaporates back into the general atmosphere of possibility. Two hands reach toward the same volume, moving in unconscious synchronization, drawn by the same magnetic pull toward a particular combination of words. The book they both seek rests spine out like all the others, but somehow calls to them with particular urgency. Collected Letters of the Autumn Movement, a title that promises intimate revelation, the kind of correspondence people write when they believe they're speaking only to a single, beloved recipient, when they allow themselves the luxury of complete honesty, complete vulnerability. The moment of collision is gentle, hands brushing rather than grabbing, fingers touching the spine and each other in the same instant, creating a brief circuit of human connection mediated by shared literary desire. Both pull back slightly, startled not by the contact, but by its significance, by the way this accidental meeting feels less like a mistake and more like destiny. Elena's voice carries the particular quality that develops in those who spend significant time in libraries, softer than normal conversation, but richer than whisper. Her apology comes wrapped in genuine consideration, in the kind of politeness that springs not from social obligation, but from authentic respect. Noah's response reveals similar acoustic sensitivity, but also something more, a quick humor that suggests someone comfortable with serendipity, someone who has learned to find delight in the unexpected. The suggestion to share the book, to become reading neighbors, emerges with the tentative courage of someone extending an invitation that could be refused. The window alcove she mentions becomes, in synchronized by mutual respect for its contents. The alcove awaits them like a stage set for exactly this encounter. Window seat positioned to catch optimal light. Cushions arranged for maximum comfort. Space designed by architects who understood that reading sometimes benefits from companionship. The window itself frames autumn like a living painting. Trees performing their annual transformation just beyond the glass. Leaves cycling through their brief moment of glory before surrender. The movement outside is constant but slow, hypnotic rather than distracting, encouraging the kind of relaxed attention that allows deep reading, deep conversation, deep connection to unfold at its own organic pace. The spine cracks softly as they open the volume. A sound like a door that hasn't been used recently, like secrets preparing to reveal themselves to new audiences. The paper inside carries the particular cream color that develops in books treated with care. Still supple, still eager to share its contents with eyes willing to receive them. Their shoulders find proximity without invasion, close enough to share the reading experience, but distant enough to maintain individual space, individual interpretation, individual response to the words they encounter together. The letters begin to reveal themselves. Intimate correspondences between writers who used seasonal change as metaphor, as organizing principle for observations about life, love, creativity, mortality, the way time passes both too quickly and too slowly, the way moments of connection shine brighter against backgrounds of solitude. Occasionally one murmurs a line aloud, sharing discovery without demanding response, offering gift without requiring reciprocation. The sound of voice reading literature aloud carries special quality, intimate, reverent, like prayer, like the particular kind of communion that develops between reader and text, when ego dissolves and only appreciation remains. Elena's observation about letters versus essays reveals someone who understands the difference between public performance and private revelation, who recognizes that some of humanity's most profound truths emerge not from podiums, but from kitchen tables where people write to those they trust, those they love. Noah's comment about precision, about sentences carrying their own weight, demonstrates similar literary sophistication but from a different angle. Appreciation for craft, for the way limitation can paradoxically create freedom, and is further thought about silences between lines, about places requiring imagination, reveals someone who understands reading as creative act, as collaboration between author and audience in the construction of meaning. The archivist appears like a sage, hair silver, with accumulated wisdom, and leads them deeper into the building, into the reading room that reveals itself as library within library, sanctuary within sanctuary. The quiet here is different from the general library quiet, deeper, more complete, as if the very air understands its responsibility to protect irreplaceable artifacts. Glass cases line the walls like altars, each containing treasures that represent not just individual achievement but collective heritage, species memory preserved in forms that can survive individual mortality. The archivist approaches with ritual care, bearing a gray archival box, cotton gloves communicating its fragility, its irreplaceable nature. Opening the box reveals not just documents, but a doorway, not just papers, but a portal into a writer's workshop, into the messy, uncertain, entirely human process of trying to capture truth in language. The handwriting itself tells stories, loops and angles that reveal personality, pressure that suggests emotion, corrections that document struggle, insertions that show inspiration, arriving after the first draft seemed complete. Elena's whispered response to a marginal note, her desire to frame a sentence about afternoons meant for reading in good light, reveals someone who collects wisdom like other people collect stamps, who recognizes profound truth regardless of its source. Noah's response, his desire to live by such wisdom, demonstrates a different but compatible relationship to discover truth. Not just appreciation, but application. The understanding that reading should change behavior, should influence choices, should transform ordinary experience into something more conscious, more deliberate, their heads nearly touching as they lean over the pages, creates physical intimacy that mirrors intellectual intimacy, both drawn into the same small space by shared fascination, shared willingness to be moved by excellence, to be changed by encounter with minds that have struggled successfully with similar questions, similar longings, similar desires to capture something true about human experience. The hours pass unannounced in the special collections room, demonstrating time's elasticity, its responsiveness to attention quality, to engagement depth. The sun's movement creates a natural progression from honey-colored afternoon light through amber toward the burnished copper of approaching evening. The stained glass dome responds to these changes like a living thing. The shifting illumination marks time's passage, while simultaneously suggesting time's irrelevance, its inability to diminish the significance of moments spent in authentic encounter with authentic beauty. The old clock continues its patient measurement in the background, but in the reading room, its authority diminishes, becomes background percussion rather than demanding conductor. Present becomes lake rather than river, space for floating rather than current demanding navigation. As closing time approaches, they choose one final letter, dated late October, speaking of a day that felt like a lantern in hand, a perfect metaphor for the experience they have shared. through the way special moments illuminate not just themselves, but everything around them. Elena copies a line into her notebook with careful attention. The precise formation of letters, the understanding that some insights deserve permanent record. Noah watches her writing, appreciates the connection between thought and expression, between the fleeting recognition and the deliberate work required to give it permanent shape. His request for permission to ask something not very library-like acknowledges the shift from literary exploration to personal connection, from shared intellectual interest to individual attraction. The question itself carries awareness that they are crossing into riskier territory, where individual choice, individual desire, individual courage determine outcome. Her permission, her willingness, suggests someone who has learned to say yes to possibility, to trust her ability to navigate whatever complications might arise from such openness. The invitation to walk beneath the elm extends their connection from indoor to outdoor, from mediated through books to immediate through shared physical experience. The return of the book to the designated cart, accomplished with care, reserved for sleeping cats and finished songs, honors both the volume and the experience it facilitated, acknowledges debt to the institution that made this encounter possible. The librarian's glance, her recognition of their faces, her knowing look, confirms what they already suspect, that something significant has occurred, that their afternoon has produced the particular glow that marks successful connection, successful discovery. Her smile carries the satisfaction of someone who has provided the conditions within which discovery could unfold, who understands that libraries serve not just as repositories of information, but as laboratories for human possibility. The great elm stands like natural cathedral, its canopy cupping the square with protective grace, creating intimate space within the larger urban environment, transforming a public plaza into something more personal, more welcoming, more conducive to the kind of quiet conversation that allows people to really see each other, really hear each other. The path beneath their feet consists of leaves in various stages of decay, creating a natural carpet that speaks to autumn's generous abundance, to nature's willingness to transform dying into beauty, into softness. Each step releases a soft rustle and a fragrance of leaves that suggests renewal, cycle, the eternal return that connects ending to beginning. Elena's revelation about her college reading ritual beneath this same tree connects their current encounter to personal history, to the layers of meaning that accumulate when individuals return repeatedly to specific locations. Her image of reading, until the light became too thin to hold words together, captures the particular dedication of serious readers, the willingness to push against practical limitations in service of intellectual hunger. space between them becomes charged with possibility, territory that must be crossed with intention rather than accident, with explicit consent rather than assumption. Noah's whispered request for permission demonstrates understanding that physical intimacy requires agreement, requires mutual desire. His question honors Elena's autonomy, creates space for her to express her actual desire. The whisper itself suggests reverence for the moment. Her nodding response, small but certain, demonstrates the kind of wholehearted agreement that emerges when desire aligns with opportunity, when timing feels right, when trust is developed sufficiently to support vulnerability. The lifting of her palms, the opening gesture, creates physical invitation, transforms verbal consent into somatic readiness, her hands positioned to welcome rather than to grasp, suggest someone who understands intimacy as mutual gift rather than transaction. Their lips meet with a particular quality that characterizes first kisses between people who have already established intellectual intimacy, emotional compatibility, mutual respect. The physical contact carries the weight of accumulated recognition, accumulated desire, accumulated understanding that this moment represents logical conclusion to an afternoon of discovery. The gentleness of initial contact speaks to mutual understanding that first physical intimacy should honor rather than overwhelm, should complement rather than replace what has already been established. Elena's hand rising to his jaw, her thumb finding the edge of his smile, demonstrates active participation rather than passive reception, mutual creation of shared pleasure, shared connection, shared recognition that physical intimacy at its best becomes collaborative art, something that neither person could create alone. Their gradual separation, the reluctant return to individual boundaries, occurs with a particular tenderness that follows satisfying intimacy. The lingering contact, foreheads touching, breath mingling, eyes remaining closed, allows gradual transition, allows integration of experience, allows the particular kind of processing that happens below conscious level. Their hands finding each other inside warm pockets during the walk represents practical adaptation to weather conditions, but also symbolic representation of developing intimacy, willingness to share warmth, to solve practical problems through cooperation. The engineering feat of maintaining hand contact while navigating pocket logistics suggests mutual commitment to preserving connection despite obstacles, prioritizing relationship comfort over individual convenience. At the corner where their paths diverge, their reluctance to release hands, their lingering at the point of separation, demonstrates mutual satisfaction with the evening's progression, mutual recognition that what they have somatic recognition of compatibility, physical systems that have registered the particular comfort that emerges when people discover they fit together well. Their final physical contact, the gentle press of foreheads, the shared breath, the echo of a kiss rather than its repetition, represents perfect conclusion to an evening of gradual approach, gradual discovery, gradual recognition of mutual attraction that has developed organically rather than through artificial acceleration. This final gesture carries the weight of promise, carries commitment to continuation, carries acknowledgement that the evening has established foundations solid enough to support future development, future deepening of connection that began with a shared book, shared reading, shared intellectual curiosity, and has expanded to include physical attraction, emotional compatibility, the fullness of two people choosing to be known. Elena walks home and catches herself in a shop window, surprised at the width of her own smile, wind-blown hair, visible evidence of evening's impact, her private joy, her unguarded expression, her authentic response to successful connection, the particular warmth of having dared to remain open and having been met there. The library will continue its daily rhythm. Students will return to familiar tables. The clock will mark its patient time, and the room will hold, quietly within its old stone walls, the shape of what began today. Two people who found each other through a shared book, who lingered over manuscripts in fading light, who walked beneath an autumn elm and discovered that some stories begin not with grand declaration, but with a gentle brush of hands against a spine, a librarian's knowing smile, a pencil's soft sound across a margin, a door opening slowly, letting the light in. Love sometimes arrives quietly, without trumpets, without dramatic announcement, through shared seats and gentle page turns and the particular courage of two people who chose to stay just a little longer in a place that rewards those who